Hi, everybody. This is Allison from Alley Cat Creations. How are you? Please like, share, and subscribe to my channel if you have yet to do so. And if you get anything from my work, a connected dot, an epiphany, a mind-blown moment, a new book to read, a new author to explore, artwork, you could check that out at allycatcreations211.com. All the links to everything is in the description underneath the video. I also do oracle cards, though that might be more difficult once I get an actual job matrix thing. Yeah. Blavatsky. Can't wait to read this next portion. I'm having to adjust my heater. I am cold. It's still cold up here. Still cold. Crazy times. Forces, mods. Let me restart that. There's my brain again. My brain is in exhaustion land. Before I begin, I had a rough night. There goes my printer. I had a really crazy night, and I'm a little on the tired side. So my brain might be a little dysfunctional, just an FYI. Let's start again. Forces, modes of motion, or intelligences. This is then the last word of physical science up to the present year, 1888. Mechanical laws will never be able to prove the homogeny of primeval matter, except inferentially and as a desperate necessity, when there will remain no other issue, as in the case of ether. Modern science is secure only in its own dominion and region within the physical boundaries of our solar system, beyond which everything, every particle of matter is different from the matter it knows, which matter exists in states of which science can form no idea. That matter, which is truly homogeneous, is beyond human perceptions. A perception is tied down merely to the five senses. We feel its effects through those intelligences which are the results of the primeval differentiation, whom we name Dihan Kohans, called in the Hermetic works the seven governors. Those to whom Primander, the thought divine, refers as the building powers, and whom Asclepius calls the supernal gods. That matter, the real primordial substance, the phenomenon of all the matter we know of, even some of the astronomers have been led to believe in, and to despair of the possibility of ever accounting for rotation, gravitation, and the origin of any mechanical physical laws, unless these intelligences be admitted by science. In the above quoted work, Upon Astronomy by Wolff, the author endorses fully the theory of Kant, and later, if not in its general aspect, at any rate in some of its features, reminds one strongly of certain esoteric teachings. Here we have the world system reborn from its ashes through a nebula, the emanation from the bodies dead and dissolved in space, resultant of the incandescence of solar center reanimated by the combustible matter of the planets. And this theory, generated and developed in the brain of a young man hardly 25 years of age, who had never left his native place, a small town of northern Prussia, one can hardly fail to recognize either an inspiring eternal power or the reincarnation which the occultists see in it. It fills a gap which Newton, with all his genius, failed to bridge. And surely it is our primeval matter, Akasha, that Kant had in view when proposing to solve Newton's difficulty in his failure to explain by the natural forces the primitive impulse imparted to the planets by the postulation of a universally pervading primordial substance. For as he remarks in chapter, I hate Roman numerals. I'm going to skip that. It is once admitted that the perfect harmony of the stars and the planets and the coincidence of their orbital planes prove the existence of natural cause, which would thus be the primal cause. That cause cannot really be the matter which fills today the heavenly spaces. It must be that which filled space was space originally, whose motion in differentiated matter was the origin of the actual movements of the sidereal bodies, and which, in condensing itself in those very bodies, thus abandoned the space that is found void today. In other words, it is that same matter of which are now composed the planets, comets, and the sun himself, which having in the origin formed itself into those bodies, has preserved its inherent quality of motion, which quality, now centered in their nuclei, directs all motion. A very slight alteration of words is needed and a few additions to make of this our esoteric doctrine. The latter teaches that it is this original primordial prima materia, divine and intelligent, the direct emanation of the universal mind, the divine light emanating from the logos, which form the nuclei of all the self-moving orbs and cosmos. It is the informing, ever-present moving power and light principle, the vital soul of the suns, moons, planets, and even of our earth. The former latent, the last one active, the invisible ruler and guide of the gross body attached to and connected with its soul, which is the spiritual emanation, after all, of this respective planetary spirits. Another quite occult doctrine in the theory of Kant, that the matter of which the inhabitants and the animals of other planets are formed is of a lighter and more subtle nature and of more perfect conformation in proportion to their distance from the sun. The latter is too full of vital electricity of the physical, life-giving principle. Therefore, the men on Mars are more ethereal than we are, while those of Venus are more gross, though far more intelligent, if less spiritual. The last doctrine is not quite ours, yet those Kantian theories are as metaphysical and transcendental as any occult doctrines, and more than one man of science would, if he but dared speak his mind, accept them as Wolff does. From the Kantian mind and soul of the suns and stars to the Mahat, mind, and Prakrti of the Puranas, there is but a step. After all, the emission of this by science would only be the emission of a natural cause, whether it would or would not stretch its belief to such metaphysical heights. But the Mahat, the mind, is a god, and physiology admits mind only as temporary function of the material brain and no more. The Satan of materialism now laughs at all alike and denies the visible as well as the invisible. Seeing in light, heat, electricity, and even in the phenomenon of life, only properties inherent in matter, it laughs whenever life is called vital principle and derides the idea of its being independent of and distinct from the organism. But here again, scientific opinions differ, as in everything else, and there are several men of science who accept views very similar to ours. Consider, for instance, what Dr. Richardson F.R.S. Eltor quoted at length says of that vital principle, which he calls nervous ether. Popular Science Review, Volume 10. Quote, I speak only of a venerable material agent, refined, it may be, to the world at large, but actual substantial, an agent having quality of weight and of volume, an agent susceptible of chemical combination, and thereby of change of physical state and condition, an agent passive in its acts, moved always that is to say, by influence apart from itself, obeying other influences of an agent possessing no initiative power, no vice or energia naturae, but still playing a most important, if not a primary part in the production of the phenomena resulting from the action of the energia upon visible matter, end quote, as biology and physiology now deny in tot the existence of a vital principle, this exact, together with de quatrefages. Admission is a clear confirmation that there are men of science who take the same views about things occult as theosophists and occultists do. These recognize a distinct vital principle independent of the organism. Material, of course, of physical force cannot be divorced from matter, but of a substance existing in a state unknown to science. Life for them is something more than the mere interaction of molecules and atoms. There is a vital principle without which no molecular combinations could ever have resulted in a living organism, least of all in the so-called inorganic matter of our plane of consciousness. By molecular combinations is meant, of course, those of the matter of our present elusive perceptions, which matter energizes only on this, our plane. And this is the chief point at issue. Thus, the occultists are not alone in their beliefs, nor are they so foolish, after all, in rejecting even the gravity of modern science along with other physical laws, and in accepting instead attraction and repulsion. They see, moreover, in these two opposite forces only the two aspects of the universal unit called manifesting mind, in which aspects occultism, through its great seers, perceive an innumerable host of operative beings, cosmic Daihan Kohans, entities whose essence in its dual nature, folks, is the cause of all terrestrial phenomena, for that essence is so substantial with the universal electric ocean, which is life. And being dual, as said, positive and negative, it is the emanations of that duality that act now on earth under the name of modes of motion, even force, having now become objectionable as a word. For fear it should lead someone, even in thought, to separate it from matter. It is now, as occultism says, the dual effects of the dual essence, which has now been called centripetal and centrifugal forces, negative and positive poles, or polarity, heat and cold, light and darkness. And it's maintained that even the Greek and Roman Catholic Christians are wiser in believing as they do, even if blindly connecting and tracing them as to all anthropomorphic God in angels, archangels, archons, seraphims, and morning stars, and all those theological delicae humani generis. In short, the role of the cosmic elements, then science, is in disbelieving in them altogether and advocating its mechanical forces, for these act very often with more than human intelligence and pertinency. Nevertheless, that intelligence is denied and attributed to blind chance. But as De Maistre was right in calling the law of gravitation merely a word which replaced a thing unknown, so are we right in applying the same remark to all other forces of science? And if it is objected that the Count was an ardent Roman Catholic, then we may cite Le Courtier as ardent a materialist who said the same thing, as also did Herschel and many others. From gods to men, from worlds to atoms, from a star to a rush light, from the sun to the vital heat of the meanest organic being. The world of form and existence is an immense chain whose links are all connected. The law of analogy is the first key to the world problem. and these links have to be studied coordinately in their occult relations to each other. When, therefore, the secret doctrine postulating that conditioned or limited space location has no real being except in this world of illusion, or in other worlds, in our perceptive faculties, teaches that every one of the higher as of the lower worlds is interblended within our own objective world, that millions of things and beings are in a point of localization around and in us, as we are around with and in them. It is no metaphysical figure of speech, but a sober fact in nature, however incomprehensible to our senses. I say this all the time. But one has to understand the phraseology of occultism before criticizing what it asserts. For example, the doctrine refuses, as science does in one sense, to use the words above and below, higher and lower, in reference to invisible spheres, as being without meaning. Even the terms east and west are merely conventional, necessarily only to aid our human perceptions. For though the earth has its two fixed points in the poles, north and south, yet both east and west are variable relatively to our own position on the earth's surface and in consequence of its rotation from east to west. Hence, when other worlds are mentioned, whether better or worse, more spiritual or still more material, though both invisible, the occultist does not locate these spheres either outside or inside our earth, as the theologians and the poets do, for their location is nowhere in the space known to and conceived by the profane. They are, as it were, blended with our world, interpenetrating it and interpenetrated by it. There are millions and millions of worlds and firmaments visible to us. There are still greater numbers beyond those visible to the telescopes, and many of the latter kind do not belong to our objective sphere of existence. Although as invisible as if they were millions of miles beyond our solar system, they are yet with us, near us, within our own world, as objective and material to their respective inhabitants as ours is to us. But again, the relation of these worlds to ours is not that of a series of egg-shaped boxes enclosed within the other, like the toy's cold Chinese nests. Each is entirely under its own special laws and conditions, having no direct relation to our sphere. The inhabitants of these are already said, may be, for all we know, or feel, passing through and around us, as if through empty space, their very habitations and countries being interblended with ours, though not distributing our vision, because we have not yet the faculties necessary for discerning them. Yet by their spiritual sight, the adepts and even some seers and sensitives are always able to discern whether in a greater or smaller degree the presence and close proximity to us of beings pertaining to other spheres of life, those of the spiritually higher worlds, communicate only with those terrestrial mortals who ascend to them through individual efforts on the higher plane they are occupying. Holy fucking shit, pause. Blavatsky is telling you everything that I have ever said, and another book that validates everything. They're talking about the densities and dimensions and how we are interblended and interlacing in between densities and other things we can't perceive with our two third-dimensional eyes, yet some of us can discern and see the other spheres or realms or densities. I know, I'm excited. That's awesome. And she puts it so eloquently. So good. The sons of Burmi, earth, regard the sons of Deva Lokas, angel spheres, as their gods, and the sons of lower kingdoms look up to the men of Brumi as their divas, gods. Man, reminding unaware of it in their blindness, they, men, tremble before them while using them for magical purposes. The first race of men were the mind-born sons of the former. They are our progenitors. Educated people so-called deride the idea of sylphs, salamanders, undines, and gnomes. The men of science regard as an insult any mention of such superstitions, and with a contempt of logic and common good sense that is often the prerogative of accepted authority, they allow those whom it is their duty to instruct to labor under the absurd impression that in the whole cosmos, or at any rate in our own atmosphere, there are no other conscious, intelligent beings save ourselves. Any other humanity composed of distinct human beings than a mankind with 2 legs, 2 arms, and a head with man's features on it would not be called human, though the etymology of the word would seem to have little to do with the general appearance of a creature. Thus, while science sternly rejects even the possibility of there being such, to us generally invisible creatures, society, while believing in it all secretly, is made to deride the idea openly. It hails with mirth such works as the Conte de Gablus, and fails to understand that open satire is the securest mask. Nevertheless, such invisible worlds do exist, inhabited as thickly as our own is. They are scattered throughout the apparent space in immense number, some far more material than on our own world, others gradually etherealizing until they become formless and are as breaths. That our physical eye does not see them is no reason to disbelieve in them. Physicists can see neither their ether atoms nor modes of motion or forces, yet they accept and teach them. If we find, even in the natural world with which we are acquainted, matter affording a partial analogy in the difficult conception of such invisible worlds, there seems little difficulty in recognizing the possibility of such a presence. The tail of a comet, which through attracting our attention by virtue of its luminosity, yet does not disturb or impede our vision of objects, which we perceive through and beyond it, affords the first stepping stone toward a proof of the same. The tail of a comet passes rigidly across our horizon, and we should neither feel it nor be cognizant of its passage before the brilliant coruscation, often perceived only by a few interested in the phenomenon, while everyone else remains ignorant of its presence and passes through or across or a portion of our globe. This tail may or may not be an integral portion of being of the comet, but its tenuity subserves our purpose as an illustration. Indeed, it is no question of superstition, but simply a result of transcendental science and of logic, still more to admit the existence of worlds formed or even far more attenuated matter than the tail of a comet. By denying such a possibility, science has played for the last century into the hands of neither philosophy nor true religion, but simply into those of theology. To be able to dispute the plurality of even material worlds, a belief thought by many churchmen incapable with the teachings and doctrines of the Bible, Maxwell had to culminate the memory of Newton and try to convince his public that the principles contained in the Newtonian philosophy are those which lie at the foundation of the atheistical systems. I love that. Dr. Whewell disputed the plurality of worlds by appeal to scientific evidence, writes Professor Winchell. And if even the habitability of physical worlds, of planets and distant stars which shine in myriads over our heads is so disputed, how little chance is there for the acceptance of invisible worlds within the apparently transparent space of our own? But if we can conceive of a world composed for our senses of matter, still more attenuated than the tail of a comet, hence of inhabitants in it who are ethereal in proportion to their globe, as we are in comparison with our rocky, hard-crusted earth, no wonder if we do not perceive them, nor sense their presence or even existence. Only in what is the idea contrary to science? Cannot man and animals, plants and rocks be supposed to be endowed with quite a different set of senses from those we possess? Cannot their organisms be born, developed, and exist under other laws of being than those that rule our own little world? Is it absolutely necessary that every corporeal being should be clothed in coats of skin like those that Adam and Eve were provided with in the legend of Genesis? Corporeally, we are told, however, by more than one man of science, we may exist under very divergent conditions. We know through the discoveries of that very all-denying science that we are surrounded by myriads of invisible lives. If these microbes, bacteria, and the tutuli quanti of the infinitesimally small are invisible to us by virtue of their minuteness, cannot there be at the other pole of it being an invisible owing to the quality of their texture and matter, to its tenuity, in fact? Conversely, as to the effects of cometary matter, have we not another example of a half-visible form of life and matter? The ray of sunlight entering our apartment reveals in its passage myriads of tiny beings living in the little life and ceasing to be independent and heedless of whether they are perceived or not by our grosser materiality. And so again of the microbes and bacteria and such like unseen beings in our and other elements. We pass them by during those long centuries of dreary ignorance after the lamp of knowledge in the heathen and highly philosophical systems had ceased to throw its bright light on the ages of intolerance and bigotry during early Christianity, and we would fain pass them by again now. And yet these lives surrounded us then as they do now. They have worked on obedient to their own laws, and it is only as they were gradually revealed by science that we have begun to take in cognizance of them as of the effects produced by them. How long has it taken the world as it is now to become what it is? If it can't be said of cosmic dust that some of it comes to the present day which have never belonged to the earth before, how much more logical to believe, as the occultists do, that through the countless ages and millions of years that have rolled away since that dust aggregated and formed the globe we live in now, and around its nucleus of intelligent primeval substance, many humanities differing from our present mankind as greatly as the one which we will evolve millions of years, hence will differ from our races, appeared but to disappear from the face of the earth as our own will. Those primitive and far distant humanities, having a geologist think, left no tangible relics of themselves are denied. All trace of them is swept away, and therefore they have never existed. Yet their relics, a very few of them, truly are to be found, and they have to be discovered by geological research. Though even if they were never to be met with, there is no reason to say that no man could have ever lived in those geological times, to which the period of their presence on earth is assigned. For their organisms needed no warm blood, no atmosphere, no feeding. The author of the world life is right. It is no such great extreme to believe, even as we do, that there may be on scientific hypothesis, psychic natures enshrined in indestructible flint and platinum to this day. So there were psychic natures enshrined in forms of equal indestructible primeval matter, the real forefathers of our fifth race. When we speak thereof and therefore, as in Book 2, of men who inhabited this globe 18 million years ago, we have in the mind neither the men of our present races, nor the present atmospheric laws, thermal conditions, etc. The earth and mankind, like the sun, moon, and planets, have all their growth, changes, developments, and gradual evolution in their life periods. They are born, become infants, then children, adolescents, grown-up bodies, grow old, and finally die. Why should not mankind be also under this universal law? Says Uriel to Enoch, behold, I have showed thee all things. Thou seest the sun, moon, and those which conduct the stars of heaven, which calls all their operations, seasons, and arrivals to return. In the days of sinners, the years shall be shortened. Everything done on earth shall be subverted. The moon shall change its laws. Interesting. The days of sinners meant the days when matter would be in its full sway on earth, and man would have reached the apex of physical development and stature of animality. That came to pass during the period of the Atlanteans, about the middle point of their race, the fourth race, which was drowned as prophesied by Uriel. Since then, man became decreasing in physical stature, strength, and years, as will be shown in Book 2. But as we are in the midpoint of our sub-race of the fifth root race, the acum of materiality in each, therefore the animal propensities, though more refined, are not the less developed for that, and they are so chiefly in civilized countries. And that ends this portion of the book. Next time around, gods, monads, and atoms. How exciting. This was a phenomenal part of the book. Holy shit. Amazing. We all forget to recognize the microbiomes and the parasites and the things that are existent that we can't even see, yet still exist. A lot of things are metaphysical. How are some of us able to see ghosts and ethereal, astral world things in our reality? It's because it does exist. You just don't have much changeable evidence, but there are people in the paranormal world, who capture all these geists, these etherical forms, ectoplasm, as they call it, that does exist. If you put your blood under a microscope, they can check for parasites. You don't see it when you shed blood, but you can see it under a microscope. So there's so many things in our tangible universe that yet we can't see yet still exist, like radio waves and functions of physics that are now, only since the time of this book being written, has now started to be seen, because there is technology that can capture images of it happening in real time. We got to have faith and kind of deprogram ourselves that just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And there is other spheres and other densities and dimensions that inhabit other planets and spaces. Is there tangible evidence besides everything that us humans can channel information from other realms? It's only hearsay, but always going in within your heart space to see what is true for you, because it's all within you. It's just about remembering the information and those lifetimes that you have lived. Fun times. Love this book. We're closing on the end of book one. We're close to the end, not there yet, but I hope you guys enjoyed this reading. I really so enjoyed it. Love it. Sending each and every one of you love, light, compassion, grace, strength, healing, shielding, and protection energy. Please be safe, be seen. This is the time to use your intuition. Get to know yourself in all capacity. And a lot of this book is going to start making sense to you, even though it's a little outdated in a lot of the scientific terms. But if we apply what we know now to what she is saying and conveying, holy shit. I had to pause. I had a very important phone call. So I'm going to be on, before I say adios for good, for now, I'm going to be on with Ethan Lucas and Lexi tonight, during We Not Me, but helping out some beautiful souls. So if you're interested, once I get the link, I will put it out there, and so excited. So until the next one, guys, have a beautiful and safe rest of the week. We're at the midweek. Well, not really. That was yesterday. You see, time space is distorted and my mind is not quite where it needs to be today. So hopefully everybody joins me, regardless of where you are, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.